far. PAC-SJ, Parents of Downtown Schools, Catholic Charities, Silicon Valley Debug, the NAACP, neighborhood representatives from other districts, particularly from the East Side, the San Jose Peace and Justice Center, the Indian Health Center, Renters Advocates, Affordable Housing Network, Siren, and the Silicon Valley Independent Living Center. And I know that list does not do the community justice. So I'm sorry, Lee, were you? No, okay. You looked at me like you were about to say something. So it doesn't do the community justice because we've got a very big, diverse community. And so we're going to fail if we're attempting to represent this community adequately or anything remotely perfectly with a panel of 36 people. And if we expand it to 100, we're still going to fail, and we're just going to have a mess because nobody's going to have an opportunity to really engage in meaningful dialogue. And so I think what Kim said is really important. This is only one mechanism for engaging the community in dialogue. We are going to have many meetings here at the council, and so many that many of you are going to rue the day you asked for more public input, because this is going to be a lot of hours of public input on not just the Google project, but everything we're doing around this Diridon Station area. And I think it's ironic, since we're talking about the Diridon Station area, the one person who hasn't spoken is a guy after whom it's named, Rod Diridon, but thank you for your patience in listening through all this, Rod. We have a lot of big ambitions here, whether it's BART, it's electrified Caltrain, it's high-speed rail, it's housing, affordable housing that we want to build, a lot of things that we want to get done in a fairly compact space that is, we can only hope will be able to accommodate half of our mutual ambitions. In addition to, obviously, the public input that Kim referred to that will be, and the public comment that will be welcomed at the SAAG, we're going to have several meetings citywide. I believe it's 4, is that right? We're going to have multiple hearings here at the council, and of course at the Planning Commission when there's actually proposals and so forth, and there's going to be online engagement as well. And there will be many other ways to engage, including directly with your elected representatives. And that gets to another really important point. This is an advisory group. The folks who are deciding are the people you elect to represent the city. And that's the 11 people up here. Those are the folks who are going to make the final decision. That's the way it works in representative democracy. We are going to accept and be very interested in the advice that we get from this advisory group. It will help us to manage and get and understand better the many diverse views that we have about all the things that we want to see happen at Diridon. Whether you want to see Google happen or not, there's a lot we need to make happen. And so it won't be the final arbiter. The job is on the elected officials to make a decision. I do appreciate that it is impossible for anyone to feel satisfied if their organization is not directly represented here. I think Scott Neese made a fairly good point, which is it is possible for one human being, I think Harvey Darnell said something similar, it's possible for one human being to actually represent multiple interests, since we are all complex human beings. I think the San Jose Downtown Association, for example, has 3 designates here, and the person who spoke on behalf of the Downtown Association, I believe, or I'm sorry, the Residents Association, I believe is a renter. I think that's Paul. I know the president of the association is also a renter. So yes, there are renters who can participate here. There are folks who can get engaged, who don't simply represent the title that's on the masthead. And I guess, I know there's a lot of concern about whether or not this panel's been stacked. I think it's important for us to understand who exactly is on this panel, and you see the list. The organizations are listed here. There are, as was mentioned, 12 neighborhood groups. More than a third of the composition of the membership here is people who live within spitting distance of Diridon Station. 12 neighborhood groups. And in case you're wondering who they are, it includes Cahill and Georgetown Homeowners Association. I guess that makes 13. Delmas Park, NAC, Gardner Neighborhood Association, Los on the Alameda, Market Almaden, North Willow Glen Neighborhood Association, Plant 51, Downtown Residents Association, Shasta Hanchett, and many of the leaders in those communities I know are renters too. It is the case that there are environmental organizations represented here. There are organizations that advocate for the environment and for business. There are organizations that represent various elements within the progressive community, not completely, but several, Working Partnerships, SV at Home, SV Rising, South Bay Labor Council, the Building and Trades Council. And yes, there are 7 government agencies. And why are they represented here? I know there's some desire to move them to an advisory role. There's a lot at stake for these agencies too, and they don't all agree about their interests, and it is really important to have the public dialogue directly with the agencies so that everybody understands what stake Caltrain has, what stake BART has, VTA. They are investing real resources. They also represent the public in their own way, and their interests are important, particularly as you think about, for example, the issue of parking, where we're going to have a very clear view from the folks at the SAP arena and a very different view from the folks at VTA about how much parking you need. And so it is important that we have the mix that is here, and in addition, we need many other voices. And that's why I invite everyone to participate in every way they can, whether it is in public comment or directly here with the council. If we're going to start adding folks, I think we need to take people off. Because I don't know if anyone's ever tried to manage a group with more than 3 dozen people on it, but I've had some experience with it, and let me assure you, with a lot of staff energy, an enormous amount of consumption at time, it's still unmanageable. So if we're going to add folks, we need to think hard about who to take off. And if we're going to say that if anyone's related to Google, they have a conflict of interest, let me suggest to you, you might want to look carefully at the list. Because, for example, SV at Home, which is a wonderful organization that advocates for affordable housing in our valley, has received grants from Google. The Law Foundation, who I think is suggested to be added, has received grants from Google. The Somos Mayfair was suggested. They got a $500,000 grant from Google. Google's investing in our community because they understand the importance of investing in our community. PATH is a great organization helping the homeless right now in our downtown, also received a grant from Google. That's just the nature. And it doesn't mean these are people who can't advocate for their own organizations or for the people they care to represent simply because they're receiving $1 or more, obviously, in the case of all these folks, from Google. And yes, Google is going to have a seat at the table because, by the way, they are also a stakeholder. And I've been informed that they will decline to vote if there's ever a vote taken in any way on any issues. I don't know if there's going to be votes taken, but if there are, Google will decline and abstain from voting to ensure that there's no suggestion that they're steering anything. They obviously have an interest, and obviously people are going to want to engage directly with Google to understand very clearly what Google's position is and for Google to hear what their position is. And I think that is natural. That is the nature of meaningful dialogue. So I appreciate there's a lot of need and for this community, for our very diverse community to be heard. And we're going to do everything we can to hear you clearly. I think, in the final analysis, the question is going to be, are we able to engage in substantive dialogue with a community that helps inform the council in a way that makes the best possible decision? And that decision ultimately will come back to us. So if you don't like what you see at the SAAG, then you've got a direct line to elected representatives whose job it is to listen to you, that's each of us, and to take your input as we make our decisions. Councilmember Khamis.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to first start by thanking staff for trying to do your best to narrow the focus and the understanding in the community here. I just had to ask you a few questions. I've been here for a little while, but not to the extent that some of my colleagues and some of the staff have been. Has any company that has located in San Jose ever gone through a process like this?
No, not that I recall.
Okay. So I know that we want to hear from the community, and I really appreciate and applaud the efforts of Google wanting to host and us wanting to do something to hear out the community. And I want to ask, how many acres are in question here? How many acres is Google thinking about developing on? Because I heard something like 162 acres.
It's important to distinguish the entire Deardan Station area is about 240 acres. Google's interest is in the central zone, which is probably roughly about 40 acres.
40 acres. How many acres did Apple buy?
Just by chance, Apple has about 40 acres.
Okay. Is Apple doing any of this process?
No, I mean the Apple. No,
Okay.
they're not. No.
Yeah, I just want to understand, did Samsung, when they located their headquarters, do any of this process?
No.
Okay. How about Cisco? They're our biggest employer.
That was before my time. That was in Mayor Hammer time, and they were very much welcome and as a small company to grow in San Jose. So I doubt they had much process.
Yeah. So I'm just, I think that, Google is doing more than any company has ever done in trying to locate their headquarters here. I just want to be factual about that. Have they asked us for any discounts on the land?
No, the understanding is that public land would be sold at fair market value, no subsidy, no discount.
Okay. So this list that's been generated, thank you. This list that's been generated here of people, stakeholders, every person in our city is a potential stakeholder because this affects our entire city. And I understand that Councilmember Carrasco, Vice Mayor Carrasco, wants to have East Side represented. I'm wondering, why can't I mean, I want South Side represented too. I mean, if we're all going to be adding to this list, I got a list of 5 or 6 other organizations that I'd like to add. But I want to go back and ask most of my colleagues. I've actually served on a committee that had 40 members in it. And it's called ABAG, and we had a joint MTC and ABAG meeting that had 3 items on there, and each discussion items, each person, there was 40 members on it, and each person was limited to 1 minute. And of course, elected officials, who could limit us to talking for less than 1 minute? So all of us took the 1 minute plus. So each item took more than 80 minutes, okay? It became extremely unruly. And then, I just refused to serve on that committee anymore. Because we can't even tackle any issues. So the fact that my colleagues want to include everybody, I totally understand. But if we want to have something with a product, an actual conversation about concerns in the community, I think we should narrow it down, not increase the scope. There are plenty of people, all of us here, a lot of people talking about democratic process. All of us have been democratically elected, to my knowledge. 17,000 plus voters voted for me. Many voters voted for other people here to get elected. We represent all of you. We do it. Sometimes you don't agree with us. Sometimes you do. But we do represent all of you. And we're here to do so if I were to make a decision, I would make my decision to keep this thing as small as possible so that we can actually hear people instead of just letting them speak. I want to be able to hear the concerns, hear solutions, rather than just get a whole mess of people shouting at you. I've seen other committees being formed, ones that the Law Foundation were involved in, and I've actually saw animosity coming, like on the mobile home issue. I think that they actually riled up the community rather than try to come to a compromise. So I want us to be cognizant that if we keep expanding this group, we're never going to get any work accomplished. There's an old phrase. I think I'm an immigrant, so I think it's like too many cooks in the kitchen, and your dish is going to get burned. So this is what reminds me of, like, hey, if we have too many people at the table, we're not going to get any work done, and that's my concern. I think you made a valiant effort. I don't know what's going to get voted on. I'm hoping that we have less at the table, less interest of expanding this group, and I hope that the 35 original ones that we picked is a working group, because even 35, I think, is an unwieldy group. You know, even if you limit the discussion for an item to 2 minutes, that's 70 minutes per item. It's a long meeting, and I know what long meetings are like. So I will not be supporting the current motion, not because I don't agree with Councilmember Jimenez, but I have served on a group that had more than 40 people. Nothing gets done. Trust me, nothing gets done. So you know, I'm encouraging you to like look at it that way. We want something productive. We want some meaningful dialogue. We want some conversations from the community that are productive, and that's what I'm hoping that this group will accomplish, and not just check off the box. Hey, we invited X group and B group and Y group. We want to be able to have productive conversations on how to solve some of the problems that we have in our city, and that's what I'm hoping to get out of this.